So in today's video, I'm going to talk about AMH. I know I've done a video on this before regarding how AMH measures egg quantity, but I really want to do a video focusing on it itself as a molecule because I'm seeing more of it being ordered, and there's so much misinformation online about what it can do and what it can't do. And also, it's a pretty cool molecule in itself. I think when we talk about AMH, I think the thing to understand is AMH is not a molecule that exists purely for us as fertility specialists to try and measure somebody's fertility. I mean, one, it doesn't measure somebody's fertility, and two, yes, it is a measure of ovarian reserve, but that is more of a byproduct of what it actually does. AMH is technically not a hormone. It is probably more classified as a growth factor or a cytokine, chemical messengers. AMH belongs to a huge family called TGF-beta molecules. So these are called transforming growth factor molecules, and they have a range of functions. Indeed, these molecules are known to be pleiotropic, which means that their actions depend very much on the organ that they're affecting, and in some organs they will be stimulatory and in other organs they will be inhibitory. They have a very well preserved molecular pathway in that it is a similar receptor which triggers a similar mechanism. So essentially AMH floats around in the blood, it binds to an AMH receptor on a certain cell, and that's really on the cell surface, and that instigates a change on the cell's inside, which activates a series of molecules called SMAD molecules, which then actually float into the nucleus of the cell and bind to the nucleus and stimulate production and expression of DNA. So it's a pretty cool little molecule. It is present in most mammals, and they all kind of function very similarly. The important thing to understand about AMH is that we know levels can fluctuate depending on the environment. So AMH doesn't act in isolation. Its production, its expression is influenced by a whole lot of things. We know, for example, that the hormone FSH, which is the hormone produced by the brain to stimulate the ovaries, is a crucial regulator of AMH. AMH cannot be produced without a little bit of FSH, but the higher the FSH climbs, the lower the AMH falls. We also know that estrogen is a very potent regulator of AMH. The higher the estrogen rises, the lower than AMH. So what does that really imply? The implication there is that AMH, despite what the information out there, is not independent of the cycle. That is, AMH will fluctuate depending on which part of your cycle is in. So if you take your AMH towards the middle of your cycle, when your estrogen peaks and when your FSH is at its highest, AMH will be at its lowest. We know by looking at AMH sort of ranges in different parts of a person's cycle, AMH is highest in the first part of the cycle, in that early phase, just after your period, when FSH is present but low and estrogen is low. We also know that AMH is affected by a whole range of other molecules. Vitamin D is probably a very famous one. So we know AMH is correlated to vitamin D levels. So if you have low vitamin D, you have low AMH. Now, does that correlate to low number of follicles? We don't know. We also know that AMH changes with inflammation. So if there is chronic inflammation going on in the body, the chemicals that mediate inflammation will drop AMH levels. Now, again, does that reflect a true level of ovarian reserve? Probably not, because we know that inflammation can be reversed, and potentially reversing your inflammatory response will change your AMH. It won't change the underlying number of eggs, but it will change your AMH, which really goes to show that AMH as a level, on one level in one point in time, is probably not as a solid marker of fertility reserve as we would like it to be. It is still the best marker of fertility reserve, but it is not entirely steadfast and concrete, which means that if somebody has a low AMH, there are other factors to consider. I mean, the other thing to think about with AMH is, of course, the pill. We know that the pill downregulates the cells that produce AMH. That is not to say that these cells don't exist or these cells cannot be activated, but these cells are inhibited actively in their function by the pill. And therefore, when we put somebody on the pill, the AMH will be lower. So I say all of this mainly to think that AMH is not just a consistent marker that is independent of all other functions in the body. It is and continues to be a marker that can fluctuate depending on environment. So just because somebody has one AMH at one point in time that is very low does not mean that it is a true reflection of exactly what's going on in the ovary.